Hey, how's it going? I'm back for another exciting video. Alright, now I get tons of requests all the time for different videos, and usually it's the requests that I get the most of that I try to film first. And I've got hundreds of requests for things that I've made, how to make it, how it's made, showing it. And so I'm going to try to squeeze in a bunch of them in the video here. I'll show you what it is, and then I'll do some of the uses, and then we'll go in the shop and I'll show you how it's made. And first I got to say, another thing, I'm not a business. I'm not set up as a business. I don't sell gear. I'm just a dude making videos on YouTube and playing around in the shop and making stuff. So anyway, with that said, maybe you can make this stuff. Maybe you got a friend that can help you, I don't know. Maybe you can improvise some of it. So let's get right to it. I want to start out with what's called eye stakes. Okay, now what eye stakes is it's just simply a rod. I always use a stainless steel welding rod so it won't rust, with a round eye on the end, okay? Now, there's many uses for it. More than you would think. You would be surprised at how many there are. And the original intentions behind this thing was for a tarp, okay? It was meant for doing a shelter. You stab it in the ground, okay, and it's meant to hold down a tarp, nothing to it. Now, something else is, if you're like me, and sometimes whenever you set up a teepee or a shelter that has a fire in it, another thing you can do with the design of these is you can use a carabiner on it, okay? And what a carabiner does, when you use it with a carabiner, let me pull this back out. Okay, you can see with a carabiner, what a carabiner does is it'll maintain a gap, and it'll make sure that your tarp's not sitting on the ground so that you got some airflow going up under there. Okay, and that comes in handy. And then another use that you can use for it is, of course, if you fool around with a lot of shelters like I do, if you have a shelter with a tarp that has a door, well, what you can do with these is you can close up that door at night by aligning the two eyelets and then just dropping the stake in. Okay, and what that'll do is this'll stay in there, and it'll make it to where your shelter door won't come apart. Okay, and then naturally you've got just the regular use of it for if you're going to hang like a guy line with a tarp. You're going to hang your tarp up high over a hammock. And then, you run this through and tie it off and stab it in the ground. Okay? And that's one of the uses too. Now, another thing that you can do with it is, now this is just for demonstration purposes. Y'all don't die laughing over my pile of wood. But if you want to skewer some food, you can take pieces of meat or fish and you can stab them on this, and you can just hold it directly over the fire. Okay? Another thing you can do is you can take multiples of these and you can stab your food on, okay, and then you can hang multiples over the fire. Because say you'll have all your food stabbed onto these things, and then you'll have each end of this stick supported over the fire with a V. And you can really smoke or cook a bunch of chunks of food. Because another thing, you got to be careful about stabbing your food onto a stick, because 90% of the time you'll have no problems with it, but there's going to be that 5 to 10% of the time that you're going to put it on something that's poisonous, like I think it's pronounced oleander, and people have actually gotten the toxins from the wood before by doing that. So, and then this other thing you can do is you can stab two in the ground like I've got right here, and then you can take another one and you can slide it through and you can skewer your food right there. On top of that, you can actually stab them all in the ground. If you got them with you, and you don't have your shelter set up and you're ready to cook something, you can stab these two in the ground just like that. Okay, so that you've got two of them side by side, and then you can put your food. You can put a couple of cups on there, like that. See, and you can cook two of them like that. You want to level it up a little bit. So. But anyway, see, these things they're multi-use. They're pretty neat. They're cool to have around. You do great stuff with them. So let's go in the shop and I'll show you how to make these things now. Alright, now to make the eye steak, what you got to do is you just take a piece of steel with a hole drilled in it. Now there's probably different ways of doing this, but to me this has been the easiest. And you just stick it in a vise, okay? Tighten it down good. Take a stainless steel welding rod or whatever rod you want to use. You take you about a 1/2 inch right there or so, 3/8 1/2 inch, and you shove it into the hole in the side right here, okay? And then you just simply push up on it, push up and over, and wrap it around. Alright, bend it up like that. Okay, now it's locked on because it's in that hole right there. Okay, so what you want to do next is you take a hacksaw or a sawzall or whatever you have, and I just happen to use a air-powered saw, and then you cut off the little nub that you shoved in the original hole. Alright, and then see, it'll slide right off then. And then you've got you a perfect little eye steak. And then what I'll do is I'll weld this part right inside here. Okay? Alright, there you go. You weld it, let it cool off a little bit right there. And that's it. Get a close-up of it. Let's see, let me get my glove off right here. Nothing to it. Okay, moving right along. The next thing is what is normally, it's based on the design of what is called a pike gag or a fish mouth opener. And what it is it's a device, it's got two little, on the ends it's bent, and then it's got a coil on it, coiled up, making it spring loaded, okay? And it's normally called it's based on a pike gag or fish mouth opener because it holds the mouth open while you get the hook out of the fish. But us bushcrafters and campers and survivalists kind of know it as a bottle hanger or bottle, I don't know, picker upper. So anyway, what you do with it is you put it inside your bottle, okay? No big deal, and you can pick it up. We've got our simulated fire right over here. And then you set it in the fire, okay? No big deal. Ain't that great? You just reach in whenever you're ready to pull it off the fire, you just pull it off, okay? Now, you can, when you make this one, there's another version that you can make. All you got to do is bend the ends a little bit differently. And I use that. You can use that for picking up cans and stuff. Like if you're going to make use a soup can or something to cook in. But what I use it for is this is an old tea bag container. And it's what I make my char cloth with. And I'll reach over and put it on. So I'll reach over and put it on and off the fire with that thing. Okay? Ain't that neat? Alright, now, another thing you can do with it is if you want to hang a bottle, you just drop it in. Okay? And you reach up here and you got a carabiner and a line, and then you can just hang it over your fire. See? Ain't no big deal. Okay? Now, the other cool part is whenever you're done cooking with it like that and you've got it hanging over the fire, you know, you just reach up here and you just grab the old carabiner, you unhook it, and this part generally doesn't get hot. And the cool thing about it is that you can pour your water without ever touching the bottle. Oh, let me see if I can show you here now. Set the cup right here. Let me move this down a little bit so I can catch it. Alright, you got the cup sitting right there. You hold on to one end, and then you take a stick and you just lean the stick on it, and then you just pour it out. You see? You don't ever even have to touch the bottle. Isn't that cool? Alright, well, let's go in the shop and let's see if I can make this without screwing it up. Okay, this next one here is going to be pretty easy because it's not going to involve any welding, and it's just something that a lot of you could do at home. But what I do is I take a full length 3-foot stainless steel TIG welding rod, okay, and 1/8 inch diameter. You don't need it to be no bigger. And I mark the very center of it, okay. Now, you can pretty much use whatever you want to, whatever you can get a hold of. But I put a piece of round stock. You could use a piece of pipe or whatever. Put it in a vise, okay? Lay it on in the center. Then you bend it down, okay? Now, once it's bent down, you want to come up with each side straight up. All the way up, okay? And then you cross back over. You bend it down again, okay? Bend it all the way down. You're going to kind of cross them. You're going to kind of keep bending down until they're about like that, okay? And as you can see out on the end right here, you got you a nice little coil on it. And if you have to, you can pull it out a little bit. Make them spring loaded, okay? Now, what I have found that works good for me is I will mark at, take your magic marker, okay, take your magic marker here, and I will mark these at about probably 10 inch, okay, and then you'll move it on back out to about 3/4 of an inch, and you mark it about right there, okay. Now, you can make them longer, hold on, here they are. Oh. You cut them off with a hacksaw or whatever you got. I like these little mini cable cutters. And you just take and you cut the ends off. Okay. No big deal. Alright, now, this is where the end treatment part comes in. What you want to do now is you want to put it in a vise where you put your other little mark. Alright. And then I take a rubber hammer to keep from messing it up too bad. And you just lean it over. Give it a tap. Okay? And then you do the same thing to the other side. So I got that little mark right there. Right there. And then you kind of lean over. Give it a tap. And there you go. That is all there is to it. And like I say, anybody can make this. This is very easy to make, and they're fantastic. And the coil you put on it makes it spring loaded. And this part right here, it will go inside and it will grab anything. And then you just want to kind of sand the ends round. So, okay, that's a simple one. Now I'm gonna move on to the next one. All right, now the next device is a hook with no name. I have never called this anything. I didn't name it. It's just a hook to me that I use. Okay, now what it is it's a piece of plastic with a bunch of holes drilled in it and some slots. Okay, nothing to it. You can make it out of wood or aluminum if you had to. Okay, now we'll talk about that later on. But the way it works is you take some paracord. It's great for hanging pots and things. And the first hole that has a slot in it, you just push it in. Okay, now let's go around here again. We'll put it on here, okay, and then the second one, you'll run it around through the second one, and then you run it to the slot, and the slots are all opposing, okay. And the cool thing is right now it'll slide up and down with ease, okay. Then what you do is you take the tail end of it, and you can shove the tail end through the middle slot, and it locks it in. Okay. The cool thing about that is you can use it for hanging things over a campfire. See, we got our simulated campfire right here. And the neat thing about it is whenever you're using this thing, is that all you got to do is you can just pull this from the center. And this thing it's adjustable. You can come up with it, you can come down with it, and then whenever you want to lock it back, you just pull it right back through the center there. Okay? And you can, since it's got a hook, you can pull that off and you can hook other things on it. Isn't it neat? Like you could cook your food over the campfire with this. You know, you could, let's see right here a minute. You could adjust this down, pull it all the way down to above the campfire, and then lock it back on, okay? And it ain't gonna go nowhere. Well, if you push real tight, it will. But basically, okay, you can cook your food right there with it. And then when you get ready to eat, you undo this notch, pull it up, pull it off, put on your coffee pot, lock it in. And then you can double lock it in there so that you don't have a tail end hanging off too much. Okay? And then I'll show you real quick here. Here's another little use for it. Right there. Okay? Steak. Okay? Not the kind of steak that you eat. But a guy line hooked to an eye steak. Okay? Like I say, you can take this and you just undo it from the middle, slide it in, slide it out. Okay? No big deal. Now, I'll show you again right here with it. It has simply, pull it through. It's got 3 little holes in line and a big hole, and then it's slotted on this side, the opposing side, and this side. Okay. Once again, the way it works, put it on the top, come around, put it on the bottom, and then you come around on this part. Okay. Right now it'll slide, and then you pull this up, put it in, and that locks it. Okay. There you go. And that's good for a guy line on the tarp. Alright, let's run in the shop now, and I'll show you how to make this. Okay, I'm back here in the shop, and this is where I've got I got buckets and buckets full of aluminum. Look at the size of this hunk of aluminum right here. But anyway, you can just, you saw you off a piece of aluminum if you want to. Put that back. You could saw it out of a piece of aluminum if you wanted to, or if you don't have any plastic or any aluminum, you could use wood. I got a bucket full of scraps of aluminum, and I mean plastic. I got all kinds of plastic, Teflon, Delrin, you know, all kinds of different types from old projects. This old green stuff right here is what I'm looking for because the green stuff right here is just some old little scrap pieces, and they're like high temperature plastic. So, you know, I got a good bit of this stuff right here. So what I'll do is we'll take some of this and go up in the front room, and I'll show you how to cut this out. Okay, now I'm gonna show you how to get started on this thing right here. And now, like I say, you don't have to have all this fancy equipment. You don't have to have a bandsaw and a drill press and everything. And it doesn't necessarily have to be plastic. I prefer plastic though, but my old mentor, Big Nose Mac, when he first started making these things years ago, he made them out of oak. He would cut a limb off an oak tree and carve it out flat and then drill holes in it. And you can just use a plain old DeWalt drill to drill the holes. You know, any cordless drill. You can use a jigsaw. You can use a reciprocating saw. You know, you don't have to have anything real fancy. So, all right, let's come down here now. And what I'm gonna do is, the way these scrap pieces of plastic worked out is I'm gonna be able to make 2 of them out of it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna measure it so that I can cut it straight in half. And what I'm going to do is, before I cut it in half, I'm going to go ahead and mark it so that it'll be easier to drill all the holes. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay this right here. And I use a thing called an automatic center punch. And what it does is it automatically punches where the holes are going to be. Okay, so I'll put a hole right there, put a hole right there, hole right there, hole right there. See, now I got the little marks in it already. Let's see if I can turn. Yeah, see those right there? And what the holes are is they're about a 1/2 inch apart. Okay, so I got one mark there. And while I'm at it, what I'm gonna go ahead and do, so that I can remember what I'm doing, is this will be cut at an angle, and then this will be cut straight out that way, this will be cut straight out that way, this will be cut straight out that way. Okay, this will be at an angle. Now like I say, it's just like everything else I make. It ain't going to be in a beauty contest. I'm making this for me to use. You know, we'll punch this. As long as it works, that's all that matters. I don't care what it looks like. But I don't want to get confused. Okay, we're going to come out here at an angle, cut this, and cut this. Okay, now the whole block is nice and confusing looking, ain't it? But when I get through drilling and cutting, that's what it'll look like. Alright, let's get to cutting. Okay, the three little holes are going to be a 1/4 inch diameter. Okay? I don't know if you can tell or not, but I've got all the little 1/4 inch holes done. There's 3 1/4 inch holes. The big holes is a 1/2 inch diameter. Okay, I got all the holes drilled now. Got the 1/4 inch and 1/2 inch. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to deburr the holes before I do the sawing with a thing called a countersink. Okay, so I just lay it down. Alright, now I'll show you the difference in them. There's the holes that aren't countersunk. Okay, and then there's the holes that are countersunk. See, they got a nice angle to them to allow the paracord to go in. So I'm going to countersink all of them, and then we'll go and I'll saw it out. Okay, I got all the holes done. I got them all nice and countersunk, even the big ones. So what I got to do now is saw out all these slots in it, and then I'll be ready to saw it in half. Alright, I got the slots done that I could, the ones that are on the outside. So what I'll do now is saw it in half, and then I'll cut these inner slots. Like I say, this is pretty easy with a bandsaw, but if you have to, you could do it with a jigsaw or a circular saw. Well, no, not circular. I mean a reciprocating saw, or a scroll saw even, especially if it's plastic. Okay, now I've got all the slots cut. I got this angle slot that makes the hook, and then these 3 slots. Okay, so what's left now is you just take a plain old knife, okay, and then you just start cutting this off. You have to kind of deburr everything, and then like on this back side here, you just start trimming it off. Okay, not much to it. Now on these right here, these slots that I've cut, I try to deburr them a little bit. Just about need a new blade. Let me set this down. Cut that. Cut that. And cut that. Okay, now before I get done, what I like to do is I like to make sure the paracord will slip in there. And see, it slips in there no problem. Okay, and that's pretty much it right there. You just finish deburring it like you do right there, and trimming all these edges up right here. If it's wood, you can just sand it. If it's or carve it with a knife. Then of course plastic, you can do it this way. If you want to make it out of aluminum, it'll be a little tougher to deburr it. Okay, that's that.